Zach, how are you?
Doing well over here, Dario. Glad to be back here. It's just later in the afternoon as compared to where you are right now. Hope that everyone out there is staying safe from the multitude of things we have going on right now. But some of those things actually play into what we wanted to talk about today. Our thoughts are with everyone down in Louisiana, Mississippi, and in the path of Hurricane Ida right now. But also this is kind of a good time to rehash with people who own businesses and run businesses that we need to be ready for these things. So Dario and I wanted to discuss some of those things. Dario, I know you are actually sitting out in the way of some wildfires right now out in California too. So what are you guys seeing out there? What are you seeing businesses do and pay attention to?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we were about 2 miles from one of the more recent ones. It was a southern fire, not where the north, where the most catastrophe is happening. But yes, no, we did see that, and in the sense of wildfires, there was some physical meeting, I guess, technology in this sense, and that's kind of where this conversation is going to go. Is the physical aspect to the cloud in a sense. Where we're going is talking about backing up, being in a sense proactive for your business, even though it is really, when it does come time to react, it's being able to have that proactivity set up appropriately. So yeah, when it comes to the physical destruction of something like a wildfire, a hurricane, a flood, earthquakes, if you're a multinational organization, this can be something you have to think about. Where is the data held physically? Because it always comes back to that. The cloud does always revert back to a physical location.
Absolutely. I kind of think about what would we do as a company if we got a phone call or an alert from, the emergency management division that said, hey, you've got 36 hours and you got to vacate because it's going to be ugly out there. There's a lot of wind, a lot of water. We're in South Carolina, so we deal with a lot of hurricanes. We have some small earthquakes. They are nothing like others, but we do have them periodically. And obviously in 2015, we had a 1,000-year flood that did a lot of businesses in. So to Dario's point, kind of where we go, if somebody called and said, hey, you got to go, you got to have something in place. If you're trying to fix things right then, you're not going to get it done.
And I mean, maybe Zach, paint a little picture of what exactly we're talking about from, I guess, the infrastructure side of how this is built out, what they mean by, hey, you got to pick up and go. I guess paint it in the sense of a company that's doing something with a physical server in their location, right? Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure. We've got clients who are down on the coast here, and, once a year leading up to hurricane season, we have to go in and take a look and make sure that things are being adhered to. Because in a lot of times in these type of situations, you have maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 if you're lucky. Dario, I know that you guys had like a 6-hour window when there were fires involved.
Yeah.
If you have all of your equipment at the office, if you left the end of the day and your laptop is still at the office, do you have time to go back and get it? I don't know. It depends on where your office is. Is your office on the ground floor at a street level? Is it on the 5th floor? Do you have to worry about floodwaters? That's one of the things we look at. If somebody has a server in their office, is it sitting on the floor? It should never be sitting on the floor. But if it is, even if there's 1.5 inches of water, that'll kill the server right there. Mm-hmm. You may have insurance coverages that will replace the server itself, but it's not going to replace the data that's on there. And that's why the backups become so important. And we always say you need to have at least 3 different options for backup. You can have one on the server that's in your office, one on what's called a NAS, an attached storage device. That can be in your office as well. That's fine, because if the server goes out, you can move it more quickly if that is local. But then you need to have a third option that's either cloud or in a secure third-party environment somewhere that is not going to be affected by what happens at your office. So that's just protecting your data.
Yeah. And I mean, that's good to know too. And I think one level, you can even go further from there. That's just setting it up and kind of almost if you're managing it yourself, But then looking at how, if you work with a company, let's just say like K2 or a separate MSP, or even just a hosting environment in general, are they backing it up? How are they backing it up? Is your MSP shop somebody who's got a server in their basement, and they may be giving you great customer service and great support and have awesome performance, but let's just say that person has a flood. Or even, we've talked about natural disasters, but what about theft? You can come in and steal a server. And we talked about, we won't go too in depth in it, but there's some compliance stuff that Zach and I have worked on where the security of the room and the access to the server room and how all that is laid out comes into it. So, theft of the physical server is something to consider as well. But then again, it could just be something, let's just say it's not even malicious or a natural disaster. Somebody put the servers in the storage room, you put the mop and bucket back in there after cleaning something up. We've seen servers next to slop sinks. I mean, these are things that companies are doing and we're seeing, and, it makes us shake our head. But you never know. And so
we saw one, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but saw one where the water jug guy, the guy who brings the big water cooler for the office, he put it in wrong, flooded everything, took one out. It's like, that's not good. And again, these folks called us in a panic, and they weren't a client of ours at that point in time. But it's like, well, what do we do? Well, planning, this shouldn't have been on the floor in the first place, but understand how this happens.
Well, that's where I said proactivity becomes reactivity, right? If you're not proactive in this setup, you can't react when the catastrophe happens.
Exactly.
And where these backups come in, you never need them till you need them. It's like a seatbelt, right? You don't put your seatbelt on saying, I'm going to get in an accident today. Let's hope that this works. You just put it on, and you hope it never happens. You hope this never happens either. And where this can go is, what does this mean for your clients? If, say, you did have to explain a story of your MSP shop had a server in their basement, they had a hot water heater break. Now you don't have access to your systems. They don't have access to your systems. What do you say to your clients? How do you explain that? I know it would be very tough for me to explain, and I wouldn't want to. So those are things that, really take into consideration when you're looking at your backups. And Zach, I know some of the stuff we can't fully divulge, but if you want to give a couple of tidbits on what we do for a lot of our clients. Now, obviously there's different tiers and different levels, but really quick, just kind of run through the different slew of options from a base that we're going to advise most clients we wouldn't even really take on if they weren't doing this, all the way up to what you're seeing some of the best in class do.
Well, again, our baseline is there needs to be 3 forms of a backup somewhere. That makes our life easier. That makes it easier for us to pull through for you if there is some sort of disaster, again, whether it's a theft, a natural disaster, man-made fire, what have you. Even if there's just a data loss event, which is, your ransomware, virus, stuff of that nature. You want to make sure that there's at least 3 copies of that. That's number one. And one thing you really need to look at when you are doing that is, how often is that backup verified? How often is it tested? It's not so much that we see, whichever cloud provider you were with, that they've dumped water on the server, but it's that you go to pull up your copies of your backup and you don't have them. They haven't tested them. It corrupted out because the internet dropped while it was sending it, which happens a lot. So how often do you test it? What do you stand to lose if you don't have a good and valid backup? You may take them once a week because that's your threshold. Hey, if I lose a week's worth of data, I can be okay in my business. It's not pretty, but I can recover. Okay, well, if last Friday that backup didn't work, you've now lost 2 weeks of data. Can you withstand that? And those are business questions you have to ask as a business owner and someone who manages them. So you want to try to mitigate it as much as you can.
And now what are your expenses to have employees twiddle their thumbs for 2 weeks until you get that back, right?
Or what does it take to bring in people to re-input data?
Sure.
Can you even re-input that data? Have you just lost it? If you're in a retail setting, Did you just lose all your customers' emails and contact information? What does that do to your marketing plan?
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore. That's a big hit. If you are like a law firm setting, how
Sure.
long is it going to take you to go track down some of these document templates that you've created that you've now got to recreate? I mean, again, my wife's an attorney. I understand the time and effort that goes into just creating the templates. And if you've got 10,000 documents that you've got to try to recreate, that is a lot of wasted time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one thing too that I want to touch on is the physical security one more time around the data center itself. You mentioned having the checks on it, but it is very good to dive into and know what your MSP or the data center that you work with privately. Maybe go take a stroll around them. Just take a look and see what it looks like, how it is, and you'll understand some of the levels that they put into it. So just staying on the physical side one more time. A lot of them, have some disclosed locations that they don't talk about from a security standpoint. Besides just being, watched 24/7, there's also physical security around there.
Yes.
Things like the ability to pump out water if water somehow did get into the facility. Around the power supplies and backups, there's multiple ways that they do that. And then really it comes down to who has access and how they break out some of these servers. So if you've ever been to a data center, there's multiple racks of servers. And for example, let's just say K2 has, X amount of space and company X has X amount of space. There's a lot of security between this server room, that server room, the accessibility, who has access to it, because yet again, going back to one of my main points was you can physically steal a server. You can put a USB drive with some sort of ransomware, malware, something on there and either take or encrypt or, go from there.
That's where you get your most bang for your buck, so to speak, really and truly. If you were trying to do something malicious, is to get to the actual server. You can control everything from there. You hit a little bit on the physical security. I can tell you one of the data centers here locally is very nondescript. You would never know it existed. It's just in the middle of an industrial area. But strategically, it is on two separate power grids. So if it ever goes down on one grid, it flips to the other grid. If for some reason that one doesn't work, they have two backup diesel generators. So you have power running at all times there. They're also in elevated position, so runoff water, flood waters, it's going to have to be pretty high in order to do that. Again, in the world we live in, I don't think anything is ever really impossible anymore. You just want to try to mitigate it as much as you can. But then as far as gaining entry, it's full biometrics to get in. You're going to have one series of locked doors and okay, welcome. Here's the coffee machine. You can have a glass of water, a cup of coffee, whatever you want to do. We'll verify if you're supposed to go through the next door. If you get through this one, okay, we'll verify if you get through the next one. So you want to put as many layers of physical security as you can between the two. And it's the same when building a network digitally. That's basically what we're doing when we build those. So you'll have it from a physical and a digital standpoint. But it's just to put as many layers as possible in between to protect everyone as best you can.
Yeah, no. And as we're going to wrap this one up in a little bit here, we've kind of dived into some basic things like backing it up by using a physical hard drive just from your laptop as a start, right, to this concept, all the way up to some incredibly secure data center, and then having maybe multiple data centers, right?
Yes.
They're perfect, but you can always add levels of redundancy here. This has nothing to do with a perfect answer. It has to do with how redundant, what makes the best solution for your company and your team. But most of all, have at least 3 forms of backup is what we would advise. And Zach, I think we could talk about this topic for forever, but we'll kind of wrap it up there. And I think we gave some good information out, and hopefully this helps you guys. Thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there, guys, and look forward to next time.
Take care.